Whenever I'm walking around a World War II event, my brain automatically views almost every piece of machinery and kit through the very specific lens. Did the French resistance ever run into this? And what happened? This is a 1944 Universal Carrier. These tiny tracked vehicles ended up almost everywhere during and after the war. Now, what we know for certain is that the German military captured large numbers of these, especially earlier in the war, and modified many of them and put them into service. But despite how plausible it sounds that they would have ended up in France or been used by the resistance or fought against the resistance, the evidence of that happening inside of France is surprisingly rare to maybe even none. While trying to answer the questions of if the French resistance ran up against it, I realized the vehicle itself tells a fascinating story of its own. To understand how a machine like this would even fit into irregular conflict, you first have to understand how it actually functions in the first place. So I caught up with Josh at Lauer Farms to look at the raw mechanics of this running survivor, from its Flathead V8 to why it drives like you're driving on a skating rink when driving on the asphalt, and how many of these machines bizarrely spent their post-war lives. Let's dive in. Here at Lauer Farms 1944, and with me is Josh. Can you tell us a little bit of what this is and how you got it here?
Absolutely. So this is a 1944 Universal Carrier. It is an improved version of the Bren Gun Carrier from earlier in World War II. Production of these started in 1943 and ended in 45. And this one came to Liberty Aviation Museum up in Port Clinton. It's on loan from a friend of ours, Don Schaefer, down in Hartville, Ohio. Basically, when he put it on the loan to us, he said, take it to events, show it, let people enjoy it. So that's exactly what we're doing here, giving a couple rides already in it. And what we have in here is a Mercury Flathead V8. They used the Mercury engines because it was a little beefier. The Ford produced V8s made 80 horsepower. This one here makes 100 horsepower.
Is that the Ford plant? Would this been made in Michigan then?
No, this one was built in Massachusetts.
Okay.
In one of the other Ford plants. It was made in Somerville. And if you ever get down to the German camp, they have a captured Universal Carrier down there, and it was built in 1945. So it's a little later, the road wheels are a little different. So throughout production, they made subtle changes to them, but overall, it's still a Ford-produced, essentially Bren Gun Carrier.
The term Bren Gun Carrier gets thrown around, but you also threw around the term Universal Carrier.
Yes.
So how does that tie in? I'm guessing it means you're carrying more than a Bren gun, but probably enough Bren guns were carried on it that it was called a Bren Gun Carrier. Is that right?
Yeah, so the primary armament would have been a Bren gun for the Bren Gun Carriers, but when they changed them up to the Universal Carriers, you could run a 1919 machine gun or a Vickers gun. Really, whatever you wanted to stuff into the front of this thing, you could do it. Like I said, if you ever get down to the German camp, they put an MG34 in theirs.
Okay, and that makes sense being German.
Yes. But with the universal part of this, these were used for basically everything. You can use it to move people, supplies, ammunition. You can tow anti-tank guns with this, anti-air guns with it. Whatever you needed to pull around, this could do it. And you can pull the crew and ammunition with you. So you can configure this to basically however you want. They even had a flamethrower variant.
Oh, wow.
Of this vehicle.
You'd want that flame to shoot up pretty far because I'm feeling the metal heats up.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, they basically put giant fuel tanks here in the sides where the crew would be sitting, and just run the hoses up, and you'd have your flamethrower here in the front.
And it'd probably stick out through the front right here where the gun is?
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Do you know any of the history for this particular piece, like where it came from?
So this one was built in August of 44 and was lend-leased to the British, where it got sent over to Europe, where it would serve through the rest of the war. And then this one ended up in Switzerland, being used by the Swiss military until the 60s, where it would be surplus back out and it would end up back in the States. And a lot of these would end up as farms or logging companies would buy these up and just beat the snot out of them.
Basically become a tractor, like farm tractor or something like that?
Yeah, essentially it would just become a farm tractor. That happened to a lot of tanks after the war, including the Universal Carriers. That would happen to like the M22 Locust. They would rip take the turrets off and just sell the chassis as a tractor. Happened with Stuarts and even some Shermans over in Europe. They would just pull them off the battlefield, fix them, and rip the turret out because you don't need it.
Yeah.
You have a tractor.
Anything like the restoration, or was it pretty much in good shape when it got to the owner?
When it got to the owner, it was in relatively fair shape. A lot of the paint inside the compartment is still that Swiss like gray greenish off color. But this one, we've been working on it for about 10 years now, just doing repairs as we need or touching up paint here and there. The engine we went through and rebuilt about 3 years ago. The latest repair we did was in the spring. We put a new starter in it. Okay.
Is it pretty durable mechanically wise, or?
Oh yeah, this holds up pretty well. It loves to be off-road, in the dirt, just ripping it up.
Not as much concrete?
The concrete, when you get the concrete and smooth surfaces like asphalt, it's like you're on a skating rink with this thing. This thing, it has no grip on the asphalt because it's all steel track. There's no rubber there to grip.
So does this often get out to a bunch of reenactments?
We had it at the Findlay Armed Forces weekend earlier this year. We had it out last month. Liberty Aviation Museum does a World War II weekend in September every year. So we got this out of the hangar and got this out in the field, moving around and driving and giving rides in it, just having fun with it. And then we got it out here at Lauer Farms this year. This is the first time we've brought it out to this event, and it seems like it's been a hit so far.
I think it's a really cool addition. I think it's really cool to see it driving around in the battlefield.
Yes, well, thank you.
Another thing, too, I thought I was going to mention, too, is like, this is not too much armor here either.
No, in the front, you have about 1/4 inch of armor, and that's the same case for all around. So overall, it's mainly there to just stop small arms, and that's it. There are some sections here where it's a little thicker, like around the fighting compartment. You get some overlapping steel plates.
Yeah, like right here, this looks like, what, 3/8 maybe?
Yeah. Some spots you'll get up to about 1 inch with just the armor, with just the layers.
Like here, probably.
Yeah, right up here.
Yeah.
And right along here.
There seems to be a lot right there from my angle.
And the seats that are built into these are meant to retract down into the compartment.
To get you out of the range of fire.
Yeah, so that way your head's not sticking up, and you have your vision slots.
Oh, nice. To give you some sort of protection.
Yep.
But
so you can still kind of flip it down, peek through, make sure you're not going to run someone over.
Yeah.
At least not run your friend over.
It looks like a good portion of your back section is mainly like engine space.
Yep. Yeah, so your entire drivetrain runs down the middle of the vehicle, and you have access hatches on both sides to service the engine or transmission, whatever you need to be doing. I mean, there's even an access slot for your starter. Getting in and out of it is a little bit of a struggle.
It is what? It's like 4 feet up?
The height of this one is about 4.5 feet.
And then this space back here would have been used for, like, if it wasn't like the flamethrower variant, probably carrying personnel or equipment.
Yeah, these have benches built into them. So essentially, when you're sitting in there, your back is facing outside of the vehicle, and then your feet are down in the compartment between the hull and the engine compartment. I'm
curious, what sort of gas mileage? Any idea on what this thing gets?
This one probably gets about 2 or 3 miles to the gallon, just with the weight of it and with how high you have to rev the engine. And the engine does have a governor on it, so you don't over rev it and hurt it. But with the amount of high revs that this engine does get, it likes to drink a lot of fuel. I bet. Yeah, I was almost wondering if it was going to be gallons per mile. No, we go. That's the Sherman, probably. Yes, the Sherman. The Sherman and anything gallons per mile. When you start talking about like the M26 Dragon Wagon, that is gallons per mile. That thing is just the sheer mass of it, plus the engine that they had in it was just. You probably got about 2 or 3 gallons to the mile. This is your fuel economy vehicle. Compared to that, yeah, this is like your Prius compared to that thing. And then one other thing I was going to ask too. I'm guessing this is a smoke canister launch? Yes. There's mounting brackets on both sides for them. We just have one of them on now. And you would also have a radio in the vehicle as well. This one still has it. And this is probably where the antenna went. Yep, I don't know if I mentioned that these were lend-leased to Britain, Canada. A lot of these after the war, like this one going to Switzerland, some of them ended up in Norway. Argentina ended up with a lot of them, and the Dutch also used them a lot.
Wow. So not only they're universal carrier, it seems like they were universally used.
Exactly. They ended up a little bit everywhere all across the world.
So when you said Germany got it, was it because they captured it or they were given it somehow?
No, they were captured.
Okay.
Whenever Germany could capture equipment, they would use it. And they like to use these quite a bit. For example, after Dunkirk, with the British leaving most of their equipment behind, they left a lot of Bren Gun Carriers behind.
Okay.
Void carriers. So Germany put them to use.
Probably redesignated them because I've seen it's like when they get something, Germany just gives it a new name. Like,
oh yes,
something else, this, Gewehr, this, that.
Oh yeah, they give it some ginormous astronomical name. It's a Bren Gun Carrier.
Yeah.
You know, we keep it simple.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments that you'd like to highlight, Josh, on this?
No, not that I can think of. It's just overall, it's fun to drive, and it's fun to take it out and let people see it and learn about it and enjoy it. So it's why we do events like this.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Josh, for bringing it out, and thank you for spending the time talking with us and sharing the history behind this and this particular vehicle and some, interesting facts about it. So thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Standing next to a machine like this makes you appreciate the raw mechanical reality of World War II logistics. The Germans utilized whatever captured rolling stock they could keep working, and post-war civilians did much of the exact same thing just to rebuild their lives and run their farms. A huge thank you to Josh, Don, and the Liberty Aviation Museum for letting us crawl all over this carrier and getting to share it with you. Now, I want to pass this over to the historian detectives. We know the Axis operated these captured carriers in various roles and functions, but I want to find that definitive link. Hit the comments down below. Do you know of a specific documented instance, maybe a photo, where the French resistance went up against one of these, went in German hands, or even utilized it themselves? It seems quite logical, and it seems like it could have happened. That would be the ultimate mobile upgrade for the Maquis unit if they could keep the machine running in the field. Let me know your thoughts. Hit the subscribe button for more history and DIY content, and also click that like button. And when you do on a mobile device, an option to hype the video will appear. Give that a click, as that will greatly help the channel. Thank you for watching. This is Brave Builds, where history, kit, and reenacting all come together to help us build a better understanding of their bravery, because their stories deserve to be remembered.